Off the Shelf proudly presents its very first guest. My name is David Batsoffen, and joining me today is the author of this crazy book, Crash and Burn, a CEO's crazy adventures in the SA airline industry. And he is Glen Orsmond. The book is published by Jonathan Ball. Glen, good morning. Welcome to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
It's only a pleasure. Just a quick question. I recently saw on a news feed that you are the second most hated person in South Africa. Who's number one?
No, perhaps a small correction. The second most hated person in aviation, not in South Africa.
Okay. That sort of narrows the field, doesn't it?
Yes, most definitely it does.
So I'll re-ask the question. So who's number one in the airline industry?
Yeah, it was actually a review written of Crash and Burn, and that was the review's opening line. Glen Orsmond, possibly the second most hated person in aviation in South Africa, second only to Dudu Mayeni, I think was the opening line of the review. I thought it was a great opening line for a book review, in fact.
It is. So tell us a bit about the book. Talk us through it, because what the book did for me is it brought up names that I'd forgotten. Airlines that had literally crashed and burnt. And, you know, if it's not front of mind, they tend to just drift away. The only one I couldn't remember, and maybe you can help me on this before we go into the book, is there was an airline that was going to be started by the taxi industry. And it came up with lots of flair and pomp and circumstance, and they had purple livery and all of that. And I think it drove down a runway and then vanished, never to be seen again.
Yes, I seem to recall that. I think the airline was called Santaco. It was supposed to be owned by the Taxi Association. I think they had a launch flight and they weren't ever heard of again.
Yeah, literally and figuratively.
Fortunately, I was not involved with that at all, for the record.
One of the few you weren't, given the scope of the book and what you talk about, and specifically about yourself. So tell us a bit about the book. What made you want to sit down and spill the beans, so to speak?
Yeah, it's perhaps spilling the beans is not the right word. Really, there's a story that needed to be told. You take Comair, one of the world's most successful airlines, had been in business for 74 odd years, had made a profit all 74 years. So it was a great airline by world standards. And the fact is it crashed, and the crash was sudden, hence crash and burn, a sudden aircraft collapse. And I was at the helm at the time. So I needed to reflect on my role in terms of Comair, and also, more importantly, what made Comair great, and then what caused its sudden failure. So I try and throughout the book, I talk about my various interactions with Comair. I had 3 stints at Comair, and I had a few stints out of Comair where I fought Comair really bitterly as one of their competitors. And it's really the story about what made them great, what caused them to fail, and my involvement in that. And then it's also about all the individuals involved in the airline industry in the past 25, 30 years. I talk about the people I interacted with, but really all in terms of connection of how did these people contribute either to Comair's success or to Comair's ultimate failure.
With you saying that, and yeah, maybe spilling the beans is not quite the term that I was looking for. Why did you go back? Did you learn nothing from your first stint to say, oh, well, I'll just have another bash at this and see if anything changes?
Well, at my first stint, when I left Comair, it was truly a great company. I left Comair simply to start a new airline, one-time airline, but it was a great company, my first stint. I learned a lot at Comair. I learned a lot from the owners. It was a family-run business, a huge success story. When I went back the second time, I was truly shocked. If I look at Comair of 2019, bore no resemblance to the Comair that I'd left in 2003. Inertia had set in. The company had become fat and lazy. They'd lost control of costs. They'd eroded their cash. They'd taken excessive debt. So the second Comair in 2019 bore absolutely no had no similarities to the Comair I'd left in 2003.
When I read the book, a couple of things jumped out at me. You talked about a girlfriend that you had, I think, at university. Then a period passes, and all of a sudden you're talking about a wife, and then you're talking about children. Where did they come in along? They just sort of pop up. And I was going like, hang on a second. He had a girlfriend, now he's got a wife and a child.
Perhaps it wasn't well explained. I lead quite a conventional life. I had 4 young children at a fairly young age when I started my career. Probably my greatest success has been my 4 children, all doing well, all thriving. So that is possibly my greatest success.
Are any of them in the airline industry?
No, fortunately not. They're in fact in all fields, nothing to do with, one's a medical doctor, one's a scientist, one's an engineer, and one's a hedge fund trader. So yes, they have nothing to do with aviation.
Take me back to the Glen at high school. Glen in matric. Did he know what was going to happen in his future? Was this ordained, or did you go through various, sort of more twists and turns in the Swartberg Pass to get to where you are currently?
No, I had no dreams of being involved in aviation. I had no love of aircraft. I was an accountant almost I found accounting easy, so I sort of stumbled into accounting at school. After school, I stumbled into accounting again. I always found it the easiest subject, so I sort of just stuck to what I knew. And I regarded myself as an accountant. I eventually qualified, and I just stumbled into aviation by chance, in fact.
In what way? People, I mean, you stumble into a job at a bank. You don't sort of stumble into aviation.
Yeah, so what had happened is I'd just completed my articles at Price Waterhouse. I was living in Mafeking at the time. Price Waterhouse had a branch there, and I'd completed my articles. The world was awaiting me, and I went to Abra, met a guy at Abra. He was running a small local airline, and he said he had just lost his financial manager. He moved across to Comair, and he was looking for a financial manager. And he asked if I'd be interested, and I accepted. Those were the wonderful days before HR departments, of course. And,
I was about to say that.
And he hired me, and I started a month later. So my first aviation job, working at Bop Air, as it was known in the time.
I remember.
And I've just stayed in aviation since then.
What are your thoughts? Well, could I pick your brain on the current SAA situation? Because I see once again they're looking for money. And once again, we as the taxpayers are probably going to have to stump up the cash. Why is this national carrier continuously given a lifeline for no rhyme or reason? Supposedly. I don't know. You may know more than I do.
It seems to me that they have fixed what the fundamental problems were at SAA, and it was really always just they had too many people. I think they had 4,000 odd staff at SAA. Now they're down to about 800 a year. So they have brought down the costs. Their success will just determine on the level of government interference in the business. If they leave SAA alone, they have got capable managers. If they leave them alone to run the business without political interference, I think they will be okay. They're fortunate that they have route rights into Africa, which is extremely profitable. And if they focus on those, I see a bright future for SAA.
Yay, finally. You guys,
and also, it's not fashionable to say that. It's quite fashionable just to stand them all the time. But I think they have done the work. I've met the guys, and I think they are doing a good job.
If we think back to the rugby, the first test, Springboks, New Zealand, when that Boeing A380 flew over, it had Emirates proudly displayed underneath. Well, they own the stadium, they own the airline. Now people are complaining. They're saying, no, it should have been the Springbok with the South African and the New Zealand flags under there. But if you own an airline, you want to punch your name, really. It's called product placement.
Okay, thank you for that.
So now I was talking when we started about the various airlines that seem to have disappeared, and the ones that I'd specifically forgotten about, like Mango, Comair, we'll talk more about, One Time, Nationwide, Kalula. All of those, I think people out of sight, out of mind. I remember, I think I was on the first one-time flight to Maputo. And it was a great flight. It was a great airline. I flew more than once with them to there. And then they also just disappeared. Lyft now pops up out of the woodwork, but it doesn't seem to be front of mind as yet. Your feelings on starting an airline, and how do you make it front of mind for people that you want to put in the seats?
Yeah, it is correct what you say. There's been probably close to 20 airline failures since the turn of the century. So airlines really do come and go. I think there is no unique formula that applies to an airline compared to any other sort of business. As you just need to get the fundamentals right. And the fundamentals are focus on cash, operate at low cost, avoid excessive debt, and excellent customer service. That's not unique to airlines. If you follow that formula, you will succeed as an airline or in any other business as well.
What, if any, advice did you get, maybe from a legal perspective, about writing Crash and Burn? Because you quote names and instances and situations sort of without fear of retribution. Or maybe that's why you're the second most hated man in aviation.
Yeah, it's been through a strict review by the publisher lawyers. In fact, they've edited out all the really good bits.
Hey, we've got time.
So they have been through.
Tell me one of the stories that didn't make it into the book. Names and
places. The fine-tooth comb. Sorry, apologies.
I said you can share stories with me now, because you can change names, you know, that to keep the people anonymous, if you wish.
Perhaps I'll share the stories over a beer rather than on a podcast. but it has had a strict legal review, and they've taken out all the bits. In fact, the first question I was asked by the lawyer who reviewed the book, he said, "Are these people all still alive, or are they dead?" And I said, "No, look, they're still all alive." He said, "Oh, that's unfortunate," because it seems like. I didn't realize this. You're allowed to say what you like once people are dead, but you're not allowed to say what you like once they're alive. While they're alive.
What is Glen like as a passenger? When you climb on a plane,
flying is a terrible experience. Flying is a terrible experience, you know, especially an airline like Safair, where you get treated like cattle, you get squashed into your seat, and well, no, you know, that's really terrible. Flying long haul overnight in economy is terrible as well. So it's just really the fundamentals. Have some leg room, some sort of onboard service, seats should be comfortable, and I'd say that, you know, that's all. Just need to get the basics right.
Well, Ryanair is still flying despite what they do to their passengers on an almost daily basis.
Yes, because flying ultimately is really a commodity. If you fly from A to B, it's a commodity. It's exactly the same. And like you price commodities, you will always select the one at the lowest price.
Yeah.
It's only when the prices are the same that you would then select the superior brand. Yeah. Unfortunately, right now in South Africa, we have very little choice. Safair have got 70% of the market, and we have to fly them because we simply have no other choice.
No other choice. I've been lucky enough to do, I think, 5 flights in a lie-flat business class section. It does spoil economy for you forever after. But
that's so true.
But it does. It's difficult to and those were because I was writing a story for the airline. It's difficult to justify the cost when you're just a passenger. So you suck up, as you say, the economy and the bad food and the bad service and people sleeping and drooling all over you, as happened on a flight just recently with a stranger who fell asleep on my shoulder. And I thought, I'll just let her lie there. I don't want to wake her. The poor thing seems to have had a busy day the day as she, you know, before she got on the airline. But what is the way around that? And I mean, I know we're going away from your book, and we'll come back to Crash and Burn momentarily. But is there a way around that, Glen? How do you make that experience different, unless you're flying with Richard Branson actually in the plane on the flight with you who wants to party from A to B?
Part of the problem is that if you look at airlines, it's extremely tough business. The margins are really tight.
Yeah.
It's unusual to even earn a margin more than 5%. So as a rule, the margins are anywhere between 0 and probably 7.5%. So when the margins are really tight, the airlines are always looking to save costs. They're looking to squeeze more passengers in to grow the revenue. So it's a highly competitive market with really tight margins. So in that environment, it's not easy to really improve the product significantly.
Let's go back to Crash and Burn. How long did it take you to write? Were you the type of writer that sat down every morning? I know being an accountant probably gives you a very good base for focusing on numbers and words. But did you sit down every morning at your computer and go, I've got to do 50,000 words today or 20,000 words?
No, it wouldn't be so at all. I had a short attention span, so I was writing sporadically, but I wrote without notes. I sat down and I just wrote the book without knowing how it would start or how it would end or what would be the middle bits. I really just wrote it down. I write the way I talk, and it was just my experience from my point of view in terms of all my interactions working with Come or fighting against Come. So I just wrote it down. The first draft probably took about 6 to 8 weeks, and it was done.
Did you, in the writing, sort of go, oh, I'd forgotten about that? Or I wish I'd forgotten about that?
Yes, it's something strange about memory. I suppose we all have selective memory. So, so what I've written would be my selective version of the events that happened over a period of 20 to 30 years.
Do you think now that there are going to be other books popping up on bookshelves in bookshops, sort of counteracting what you've said?
It is my perspective, and I'd welcome other perspectives, in fact. But if I look at the South African aviation industry, I don't think anyone's written books about it yet. Generally, they write books about aircraft. These are the aircraft operated. This is the plane scheme. This is the engine thrust. All those sort of really boring things. So what mine was just simply, here's what happened at Come. Here's the people involved. Here's how very often in business, instead of making sober, sound, rational business decisions, important decisions are really made based on personality and emotion. I talk about that throughout the book as well. So it had no real strategy in terms of what is the message I need to get across. And it's almost, once I've completed it, the themes seem to unfold from the book, which there was no master plan to start off with, no.
Okay, because I was about to say, who would be the demographic for this book? Who would you want to buy this book? People that you used to work with going, why am I not in this book? Or people that you used to work with going, oh, bloody hell, I'm in this book?
Perhaps all of the above. It sold fairly well so far, I'm told by the publishing people. So it seems like it has found a niche. They're looking probably at a second print run now. So somehow it has found a niche. It is a light read. It's an easy read, I like to think. It's not a business book, definitely not.
No, it isn't.
It's not 7 effective ways to become an effective manager. It's not about...
not in this instance, it's not, Glenn.
Yeah, so I try to make it a light read that... and as I said, at the risk of repeating myself, I write the way I talk, and that's really what I set out to do. But it seems to have found a niche. The reviews have generally been favorable. I've taken a hammering on some social media, which I would expect, because you always need a big bad guy somewhere. But so far, it has really gone well.
Was it Mae West who said there's no such thing as bad publicity, only publicity? So good, bad, or indifferent, as long as you don't take it personally, you're okay. So if they rubbish you on social media, you just go, thank you, comment noted.
And I find them quite funny, in fact, some of them. I'm really fine with it. I have no problem being attacked. You know, if you want to be liked, you probably shouldn't stay in aviation, I'd imagine. But
Well, I
I, I've actually found some of them quite funny. Perhaps one or two have crossed the line. Being called Satan, I thought might have been pushing it a bit too much, but I've really been fine with all the other comments. Yeah.
Listen, if we'd started this conversation and there were flames behind you and I could see horns grown out of your head, then yes, maybe that would have been a comment worth making. But I don't see any of that. So, hey, listen, maybe
Okay.
they just had a bad experience with you, and
Yeah,
the way they see you. And you know, everybody's entitled to an opinion, unless you're on social media, and then the opinion is only of the person writing the comment. Nobody else is allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah, and what you also accept is people fly.
Yes.
People are flying all the time, so they have a view. They have a view. They have an experience, so they are fully entitled to their views. Yeah.
Do you have, being CEO, do you get or did you get brought stories about passengers that you can share, good, bad, or indifferent? Because I mean, there are a lot of different types of passengers. There's, you know, passengers that get on and do what they're told, and then there are passengers that get on, don't do what they're told, and they believe that they have the right not to fasten a seatbelt or to stand up as the plane is about to take off, that type of thing.
Yeah, passengers are, it's hard to generalize, but it seems very often that you get really sane and rational and reasonable people. When they arrive at airports, they just lose their mind, you know. It's the strangest thing. A flight delay can flip them over the edge. A problem with checking can flip them over the edge. So I've always found it quite strange how these real reasonable, rational people sometimes just lose their minds at airports. What I've also found is often staff have to face really obnoxious passengers. And
Yeah.
I've always told them, if there's a problem, just ask them to call me. And then passengers would often phone me, and they'd be so nice, you know, after the event. And then I'd tell the staff, look, I don't know what your problem is. That's a really nice guy. And they just can't believe it. At the airport, the guy flipped and totally lost his mind. So I suppose there's some psychological thing behind it on why passengers lose their minds at the airport. I've no idea why.
You know, I'm just thinking as we're talking, Glenn, when you go to a dentist, even as an adult, and then they finish doing whatever they need to do, and going to a dentist is not something any of us really enjoy. But then they give you a sucker or a lollipop or something because you've been a good patient. Maybe at the check-in counters, they should, under the counter, have a lollipop, a box of lollipops. And if the passengers behave, then they give them a lollipop before they leave.
Yeah, but those same passengers wouldn't mind waiting half an hour at the dentist. You know, if they've got an appointment at 3 o'clock and he only sees him at 3:30, that's no problem at all. But let a flight be 30 minutes late and all hell breaks loose. So I'm really not sure what the psychology is.
Yeah, maybe it's because the building's called a terminal. Already you're on the back foot. Where to for you now? Now that the book is out, are you still involved? Do you want to be involved again, or have you sort of pivoted and looked at something else?
No, I've stuck to aviation. It's all I know. I'm an accountant by trade, so I'm still involved in aviation, but not in a high-profile position. So it's what I do. It's all I know how to do. I'm probably unemployable outside of the airline industry. So right now, it's really going well. Thank you.
I was going to say, because some people probably say you're unemployable within the industry now, given
Suppose that's also true.
The book is currently available. It's called Crash and Burn. It's published by Jonathan Ball Publishers. Are you the type of author, and I ask this of all the authors I interview, Glenn, that will go into a bookshop and look at the book? Now, your picture doesn't appear on the back cover, so you can't be standing reading the book going, oh, look. But do you, if the book is side on a shelf, move it to that way so that people can see it? Or do you stand there and loudly go, oh, look, it's a book by Glen Orsmond? I wonder what it's like. And then see if there's any reaction from the people around you.
Perhaps I'll plead the fifth on that one. Yeah.
Fair enough. I'll allow you to do that. Because I should imagine that if you troll the bookstores, there are people who are browsing books. Maybe they've picked up your book and have a look at it, and then put it back and move on. And would that be disappointing for you, or would it just be okay? So it's not their cup of tea type of thing.
No, it really wouldn't be disappointing for me. The whole objective of the book was not to necessarily even have it widely read. It was a story that needed to be told, and I've tried to tell the story. And if there are people who'd like to hear the story and they wish to read it, I think that's great. It is a niche market. There probably aren't that many people interested in the aviation industry and actually reading a book about it. So yeah. I'm actually surprised how well sales have been so far, and it's been great. But I fully understand. That's why I'd also hate to give the book as to someone as a gift, because they might just not want to read it, firstly, and secondly, they might not just enjoy the book at all. So if someone wants to buy it, it's great. I appreciate every sale.
At what point do you start looking at secondhand bookstores going, I wonder if they've got a copy of my book?
I've no idea. I've not really considered myself as an author, so I'm not sure how these things work. You know, I'm an accountant who happened to write one book.
Yeah.
So
there's no
people call me author.
There's no novel in the offing about that sort of features an airline and the shenanigans that go on maybe behind the doors in the offices type of thing.
No, I've read somewhere everyone has a single book in them, one book, and I think this is my book. I really wouldn't be writing a second book.
Okay. The book, Crash and Burn, as Glenn and I have been chatting about, you tuned, just by the way, or you're watching, he says, trying to click on that. It's called a new platform called Off the Shelf with yours truly, David Batsoffen. My first guest has been Glen Orsmond, and we've been chatting about his book called Crash and Burn, the CEO's Crazy Adventures in the SA airline industry. If you're at all interested in what goes on, this is the book for you. And what I suggest is you buy it at an airport, because it's an easy read. It really and truly is. Buy it at an airport and read it on your next long-haul flight. And then see when you come back if you still want to be a passenger. Although there's no ways else to get from Africa to Europe short of catching a cruise liner now. You know, how do people do that these days? Glenn, thank you so much for your time. He says, looking for buttons once more. These things tend to vanish. Let me stop the share and we can get back to there we go. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all the best with the book. As I said before, it's available at all good, bad, and indifferent bookstores, not only the good ones. Is it available online as an ebook?
Yes, it's available as an ebook, and it can also be purchased on Takealot as well, and exclusive books, I think, as well. Yes.
Okay, so you have a friend that's got a birthday coming up. This is the gift for them. Or give it to somebody as I said earlier, about to step on an aircraft. Glenn, thank you so much for being a guest. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for having me on your show.
It's only a pleasure. My name is David Batsoffen, and this has been Off the Shelf.